Earth systems and how they came to be. And I will just get started. So, Tina, if anybody has any questions, please interrupt me and I will try and respond to them.
Thank you.
All right. So, did you say something?
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Okay. All right. So, the Earth is that we have today is not the way it formed 4.56 billion years ago, which is very easy to remember, right? 4.56. That's when the Earth started. And at the beginning, like all of the silicate planets, it was very, very hot. It was molten and it slowly cooled. Water was added. And today we've got the remarkable environment that we enjoy today. So the planets of our solar system, they all formed about the same time that the sun formed, 4.56 billion years ago. So the planets that are far from the sun are dominated by volatile elements like hydrogen and helium. They're gas, and the planets closer to the sun are rocky, like the Earth. So let's watch a video. I hope that you will see that. If you don't see it and hear it, let me know, and I'll try and figure it out.
In the past few decades, our spacecraft have visited many exotic locations in the solar system, including icy comets that have orbited the sun since the planets were still taking shape. We have explored relatively tiny asteroids, ancient rubble piles held together by weak gravity. And we have found that the largest asteroids resemble the building blocks of planets themselves, all of which suggests that these objects offer clues to how the planets formed. And we have even found evidence for a violent rearrangement of the planets. Computer simulations allow us to reconstruct the formation of our solar system 4.6 billion years ago. We use the laws of physics to create these virtual experiments in order to figure out how planets took shape. After the sun ignited, most of the material around it had flattened into a disk of gas and dust. We can zoom into a simulation of a portion of a thin disk, a small piece of the universe in a box. Here, a dense swarm of objects clumped together to form what astronomers call planetesimals. This simulation addresses how planetesimals form from much, much smaller particles, the size of pebbles. Pulled together by gravity, some planetesimals formed the planets, while others became asteroids and comets and dwarf planets. As the planets accreted, they carved out gaps in the disk. But the solar system remained quite cluttered. If we look at the orbits of the planets and accelerate the passage of time, so 1 million years pass by every 10 seconds, we can watch how the debris clear. In this simulation, the giant planets, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, shift their orbits, and many unlucky asteroids and comets and dwarf planets get kicked out of the solar system. The migrating giants wreak gravitational havoc. The distribution starts out quite flat, but as most small objects get tossed out, others settle into stable orbits that allow them to coexist safely with the planets. But their orbits aren't as flat as the original solar system. Instead, they follow trajectories far above and below the plane of the planet's orbits. Today, the orbits of Pluto and other Kuiper Belt objects show exactly this pattern. The tiny icy worlds that inhabit the outer reaches of the solar system provide evidence for an ancient interplanetary transformation.
Okay, so that sort of it gets the planet started. All right, and as a result of this, we have a sort of a zonation in the material. So the inner bodies near the sun, what becomes the sun, are going to be heated up, and they'll tend to not accumulate the volatiles that the ones farther away, that's colder, do. So we can talk about a solar system frost line. Inside, you have mostly rocky bodies. Outside, you have mostly larger but less dense bodies. This is a representation here, the rocky material on the inside, the icy material on the outside. And this is plotting density. One way that we can distinguish between different bodies is how dense they are. That's mass over volume. So all of these inner planets, Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars, have these high densities greater than 3.5 grams per cubic centimeter. And as you go out to Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, much, much lower. And that's because there's so much ice and gas in these things. All right. Now, a fellow by the name of Vladimir Vernadsky realized that Earth was really kind of an interesting system because it was an interaction between what he called four spheres. Or actually, that looks like there's five of them, doesn't it? There's the solid Earth, and we'll talk a little bit about that. There's the hydrosphere, the oceans, lakes, and rivers. There's the cryosphere, that's ice, like the pole regions. There's the atmosphere. And then using all of these spheres is the biosphere. And we'll talk about one more sphere later in this presentation. So if we talk about these spheres, we can recognize, okay, atmosphere, that's gas, hydrosphere, that's water, solid Earth. But it's not clear that the spheres and the Earth systems map entirely on each other. It's not clear, at least to me, that one of these spheres is one of these Earth systems. So I asked my fellow geoscientists how many Earth systems there were, and I got a few answers. Two of them said one. There's basically just one Earth system. Two of them said there were five, basically following Vernadsky's spheres. And one of them said, I guess I don't know what is an Earth system. And some of you might be in that group as well. So this is from an introductory text by a fairly famous Earth scientist, John Grotzinger, and he shows an interesting way. He's got, looks like, three systems here: the plate tectonic system, the climate system, and the geodynamo system. And so the climate system includes, according to him, the atmosphere, the hydrosphere, the biosphere, and the cryosphere. The plate tectonic system involves interactions among the solid parts of the convecting Earth, the lithosphere, the asthenosphere, and the deep mantle. And he talks about those three. And then there's the geodynamo system, which most of us take for granted, but the Earth is in fact protected by a magnetic sheath that's set up by convection in the liquid outer core that sets up electrical currents that impose a magnetic field that deflects a lot of cosmic radiation and solar wind and protects us. So that's another way to look at the Earth systems. There's three of them. Now, this is another one from another scientist by the name of Chris Scotese. He says there's seven of them. So he's got the solid Earth here. Here's the ice, so that'd be the cryosphere. Here's the hydrosphere. Here's the biosphere. He's calling the climate system as another Earth system, the land as another Earth system, and then obviously that's the atmosphere. So there's a number of ways we can parse this. And so if you're confused about how many Earth systems there are, don't feel bad. The specialists can't agree. But if you think about it, the interaction between land and water and ice and life and atmosphere, all of these things, you can see that they are not separate things, but they interact in ways that can't necessarily be predicted easily. So let's talk first about the solid Earth system, which is, oops, let's go back there. So Earth, this is the Earth cut away, and we're basically looking at the Earth's 7,900-mile diameter. And then if we just look at what's there, the crust is the outermost part. It's very thin, but it's very important. For example, if it was all oceanic crust, the ocean would cover the surface of the planet and there would be no people because people don't breathe water. We need land. So we're very fortunate to have, 1/3 land and 2/3 water. Then under that is what we call the mantle, which is, we don't have to get into the nature of this, but it's a particular kind of rock that's very different than what's in the core. And the core is differentiated into the outer molten core, where convection makes the magnetic field that protects the Earth, and a solid inner core. So these are all parts of the planet, and this body is convecting. Things are moving in it. So all of the silicate bodies, including the Earth, have a similar density structure of core, mantle, and crust. And these are compositionally distinct parts of a planet. The core is made up of nickel-rich metallic iron, molten and solid. The mantle is made up of the more dense silicate minerals, but less dense than iron nickel. And the crust is made up of lighter silicate minerals. So let's talk a little bit about convection.
Convection is a method of heat transfer in fluids. So it could be in gases like the air, or it could be in liquids like the water here. And in this experiment, we're going to have a look at some convection currents. So the setup is just a heat-proof mat down here. I've got a tripod, a gauze on top, and then I've got a beaker that's full of cold water. I also have my Bunsen burner in order to heat it up. And we also have this chemical here called potassium manganate 7, sometimes also known as potassium permanganate. And all this is doing is it's acting as a dye, so we can see where the water is actually moving inside this beaker. Now, there are some hazards associated with this, so I'm going to make sure that I don't touch it. So I'm just going to use some tweezers to get these small crystals out. And I'm also going to be wearing safety glasses throughout. The other thing I'm going to make sure is I'm not sat down at the desk, because if we were to have some hot water in this beaker and it fell over, if I was sat down, I couldn't necessarily move out of the way. So I'm going to be stood to one side as we're heating this up. Now, in order to get this potassium manganate to the bottom of that container, I'm just going to use a straw. So if I just put that in there very carefully, I'm just going to get a couple of crystals of this and put it down to the bottom. You don't want to be putting loads in, otherwise all you do then is you end up boiling purple water, and that doesn't really show anything. So in a way, less is more. So we're just going to add a few crystals. Now I've just put literally one small crystal at the bottom, hardly anything at all. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to light the Bunsen burner and just very gently heat on this side of the beaker. And we can now see how the water is rising up above that crystal. And then when it gets to the top, we get this current where it maybe starts to move down the other side as well. What we now have inside the beaker is a convection current.
Okay, so the Earth's mantle is convecting, and that's what we're seeing here. This is a numerical model where they put in reasonable viscosities and temperatures and to generate the mantle convection. So the core is here in the middle. That's why it looks like a donut. We're not looking at this convecting region. We're looking at the mantle, and the crust is sitting on top. So we're sitting up here. And so this is a numerical simulation, and the cold rocks are dense and sink. Those are the blue things. Those, you can see them sinking there. And then the red things are hot rocks that are rising. And you can imagine that near the core, the mantle is hotter, and near the surface, it's cooler. So let's watch this numerical simulation. So this is a realistic, you'll see up in their time, up at the top, you'll see the time that is, these are millions of years. So this is all happening over, 700 million years. It's a long time. So every once in a while, you'll get something rising from near the core mantle boundary. And then every once in a while, you'll get something sinking. Okay. That's convection in the Earth's mantle. All right, so that is the solid Earth is a convecting system, and all of these other systems are on top of it. So let's look at the next one. Now, this is the atmosphere and the hydrosphere, and this is a very complicated diagram. This is looking at time. We are here, and it's going back 2 billion years. GYR is billions of years. And here we're looking at, here we are at 0, and these are in millions of years, so a little confusing, but as you know, there's 1,000 million years and a billion years, so this would be 3.5 billion years. The Earth is formed here at 4.6 billion years. Is there a question?
Oh, no, sorry, I was just stretching.
Okay, that's fine. All right, so we can look at a number of things that may be of more interest to other people, but I think oxygen is one that we're all interested in. So what we can see is at the beginning, 3.5 billion years and more, there was no oxygen in the atmosphere. So our atmosphere has completely changed composition. Now we're about, about 23% oxygen in our atmosphere, whereas at the beginning there was nothing. So the process of increasing the oxygen concentration of the atmosphere is one of the most remarkable emergences in the Earth system. We don't have to worry about methane. We don't have to worry about sulfate or these sulfur isotopes. This is the one that I think everyone is most interested in, is this rise of atmospheric oxygen. Now we can look at the sort of evolution of the Earth's atmospheric composition. Here we are today with hydrogen, water, and actually what we're looking at here is this is the beginning of the Earth going to 2 billion years after the formation. And you can see that the early Earth atmosphere is thought to have been very rich in carbon dioxide and fairly rich in nitrogen, but not as rich as it is today. But oxygen starts to grow in the atmosphere beginning about 2 billion years ago. But we couldn't live in that. There's so little oxygen, it would be worse than being at the top of Mount Everest in terms of how much oxygen we could get. We need this 23% oxygen atmosphere that we have today. We evolved into this oxygen atmosphere. Now, the climate system obviously includes the atmosphere, but there's a number of things that are happening. Obviously, the sun is shining, and when it interacts with the atmosphere, a number of things can happen. So if we think about the total amount of solar radiation, some of it reaches the surface, but much of it doesn't. Much of it is reflected by aerosols, dust and things in the atmosphere, and by clouds. The more clouds there are, the less of the solar radiation reaches the surface. Then there are chemical reactions that happen in the upper atmosphere, oxygen combining to make ozone. And then there's the interactions that everybody is very concerned about now with greenhouse gases and things like that. But the climate system is this interaction of the Earth system, the solid Earth system with the atmosphere and the sun. And one of the questions we have to address is the sun part of the Earth system? And this is all quite under discussion, and sometimes definitions are the enemy of understanding. Now, the biosphere is perhaps the one that we're most interested in because we are certainly part of that. So let's watch a 4-minute video about Vladimir Vernadsky.
He is known for being a prominent Russian, Ukrainian, and Soviet mineralogist and geochemist. He is recognized for being one of the founders of geochemistry, biogeochemistry, and radiogeology. His name is Vladimir Ivanovich Vernadsky. In the realm of scientific pioneers, one name stands tall: Vladimir Ivanovich Vernadsky, a Russian, Ukrainian, and Soviet mineralogist and geochemist. His contributions to the fields of geochemistry, biogeochemistry, and radiogeology are unparalleled. As one of the founders and the first president of the Ukrainian Academy of Sciences, Vernadsky left an indelible mark on the scientific community. But it was his groundbreaking work in 1926 that truly solidified his legacy. In his book, The Biosphere, Vernadsky popularized the term biosphere, coined by Edward Seuss in 1885. He hypothesized that life itself is the geological force that shapes our planet. This revolutionary idea forever changed our understanding of the intricate relationship between life and the Earth. It is no wonder that Vernadsky's portrait graces the Ukrainian 1,000 Ukrainian hryvnia banknote, a testament to his immense impact. Vernadsky's contributions did not go unnoticed. In 1943, he was honored with the prestigious Stalin Prize, recognizing his exceptional achievements. His work continues to inspire new generations of scientists, reminding us of the profound interconnectedness of life and our planet. Vladimir Ivanovich Vernadsky's legacy serves as a reminder of the extraordinary possibilities that scientific inquiry can unlock and the transformative power of knowledge. Vladimir Vernadsky, a renowned scientist, made significant contributions to the field of Earth's development. He popularized the concept of the noosphere and expanded on the notion of the biosphere. It was during his encounter with Austrian geologist Edward Seuss in 1911 that Vernadsky learned about the term biosphere. According to Vernadsky's theory, the noosphere represents the third stage in Earth's development, following the geosphere and the biosphere. Just as the emergence of life transformed the geosphere, the emergence of human cognition will transform the biosphere. Vernadsky believed that life and cognition are crucial aspects of Earth's evolution, existing since its inception. This holistic perspective complements Charles Darwin's theory of natural selection, which focuses on individual species rather than their relationship to a larger principle. While Vernadsky's visionary ideas were not widely accepted in the West, he was among the first scientists to acknowledge that the Earth's atmosphere contains oxygen, nitrogen, and carbon dioxide as a result of biological processes. In the 1920s, he published work suggesting that living organisms have the power to shape planets as much as any physical force. Vernadsky played a pivotal role in establishing the scientific foundations for environmental sciences. As a prominent member of the Russian and Soviet Academies of Sciences, Vernadsky also founded the Ukrainian Academy of Sciences and contributed to the development of the National Library of Ukrainian State and the Tavrida University in Crimea. During the Russian Civil War, he hosted gatherings for young intellectuals who later formed the Emigre Eurasianism movement. In the late 1930s and early 1940s, Vernadsky provided valuable advice for the Soviet atomic bomb project. He advocated for the exploration of nuclear power, the surveying of Soviet uranium sources, and the conducting of nuclear fission research at his Radium Institute. Sadly, Vernadsky passed away before witnessing the full extent of these endeavors. Despite being an atheist, Vernadsky showed an interest in Hinduism and the Rig Veda. His son, George Vernadsky, emigrated to the United States and became a renowned author of books on Russian history. Vladimir Vernadsky's contributions are honored through the naming of streets, avenues, the National Library of Ukraine, and the Tavrida National University in Crimea. In recognition of his 150th birthday, UNESCO sponsored the Globalistics 2013 International Scientific Conference held at Moscow State University.
Do you want to explore more scientists?
All right. So we see these interactions, and obviously we're interested to understand them because the actions of especially humans is affecting all of these systems. And this is an Earth system, right? The interaction of the hydrosphere with the lithosphere, right? The hydrosphere, there's nutrients that are released by.
Robert,
Yes.
Ryan posted a question.
Can someone read it to me? I'm not checking the chat.
Ryan. Ryan?
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So my question was, so with all the different like human impact on like Earth's like cycles, do you think that the biosphere is resilient, especially with like different feedback loops like melting and permafrost releasing like methane, or like deforestation changing rainfall patterns?
When you say resilient,
Yeah.
there's two ways to interpret that. One is that life will not be changed by its changing environment. And the answer to that is no, life will be changed by the changing environment. Life is sensitive to the changing environment. But another way to answer that is, will life successfully adapt to the changing environment? And the answer is yes, it always has, and it always will. Life is amazingly resilient, and the kinds of challenges it's facing now are trivial compared to ones that it's faced in the past. One of them was an impact by a large asteroid, about 10 kilometers across, that it basically extincted the dinosaurs and many other creatures. But the dinosaurs were not resilient, but life was, and we are grateful for that, because we are, if that asteroid hadn't hit, the dinosaurs or their ilk would be the dominant species. We would not exist. So the answer is yes, life is resilient. Now, is one particular species going to survive the changes? That can't be said. Species are always changing. The vast majority of species that ever lived are all extinct, not by human activities. Does that
Perfect.
answer your question?
Yeah, no, it really did. Thank you, Professor. I appreciate it.
Thanks. You're welcome. All right. So now another idea that came out is the Gaia hypothesis. And the Gaia hypothesis was developed by James Lovelock and by Lynn Margulis. And I think we've got a video on that too.
The Earth is the only planet in our solar system capable of supporting life. Even from outer space, it is clear that the Earth is full of life. It has a delicately balanced ecosystem of millions of living organisms coexisting and relying on each other for survival. But what if all these different organisms were actually just parts of one superorganism, the Earth? You curious? Discover more. Know more. The Gaia theory, which is named after the Greek goddess of Earth, talks about this idea in detail. This theory argues that all living organisms, along with their inorganic surroundings, adapted and evolved as a collective whole in the form of one giant, self-regulating system that keeps things in place in order for life to survive on Earth. This theory was put forward by a highly accredited scientist named James Lovelock. He came up with this theory while studying about why Earth's atmosphere is different from that of Mars. Why does our Earth have both oxygen and methane when Mars has mainly carbon dioxide? James Lovelock suggested that since oxygen comes from plants and methane is the result of bacteria, the Earth is regulating its atmosphere, providing oxygen to support life and methane to help maintain a livable temperature. Over the years, he came across more examples of the Earth trying to keep itself alive, and his theory started to attract prominent supporters, such as former US Vice President Al Gore. In essence, many scientists are to believe that Earth itself and life on Earth have evolved together over time in such a way that each has affected the other every step of the way. Rather than life on Earth simply reacting to the environment, life on Earth also affects and changes the environment around it. But despite all the people who supported the Gaia theory, there were far more critics who dismissed it. Critics of the Gaia theory argue that the entire theory violates the scientific method, since it only provides ideas but offers no real explanation of exactly how organisms could act together to maintain a balance of life on Earth. As it stands today, the Gaia theory is still heavily debated in the scientific community. The Gaia theory can at least be useful as a way to encourage people to take better care of our planet. If we look at ourselves as being a part of our planet's regulatory system, then we should choose to make more conscious decisions to help that system, rather than to destroy it. Maybe one day we'll look back at the Gaia theory as the beginning of a better understanding of our role on Earth. If we think of the Earth like a human body, and when our body overheats, we have our own perspiration system that makes us sweat to help regulate the body temperature and cool down. When Earth starts to overheat, it regulates its atmosphere and controls its temperature using its own system of plant and animal life. But now our planet is heating up at a pace that is beyond its abilities to keep fixing itself, and that is majorly because of us. So, are we a part of Earth's regulatory system, or are we a disease that is slowly disrupting its delicately balanced system? What do you think? Let us know what you think of the Gaia theory in the comments below. Until next time, subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon for notifications of our new videos.
Very cool.
All right. Now, the last part of the spheres, and this is in many ways the most interesting, is called the noosphere. The noosphere is a philosophical concept that describes the sphere of human consciousness and its impact on the biosphere and evolution. The word comes from the Greek words for mind or intellect and the sphere. This was developed by Vernadsky, but also by a Jesuit priest, Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. And Vernadsky's concept was based on geological sciences, whereas Teilhard's was based on theology. Both concepts share the idea that human reason and scientific thought are creating a new evolutionary geologic layer, or we could say sphere or system. Let's watch this video.
In terms of the universe as a whole, we live in a very special time. We live in the era when humans have discovered the emergence of something like a planetary nervous system. It has even been understood as a planetary mind. The great work of our time may be learning how to build this planetary mind in ways that lead to the well-being of the Earth community.
I'm Brian Thomas Wim of the Human Energy Project. This discovery of the noosphere was carried out by the French paleontologist Pierre Teilhard de Chardin and the Russian biochemist Vladimir Vernadsky.
They were the first to see Earth's developmental sequence. We began as molten rock, which gave birth to Earth's oceans, in which spawned Earth's life. This life spread all around the planet and formed an envelope, which we call the biosphere. Now, out of the most complex animals of this biosphere, Earth's mind is rising. Teilhard and Vernadsky named this mind the noosphere. Drawing on their work and that of contemporary scientists and philosophers, the Human Energy Project is creating a series of films that presents the best current scientific understanding of this noosphere, this planetary nervous system. Already, you probably have questions about this whole notion of a planetary mind. With the ravages of climate change, it is easy for us to convince ourselves Earth is doomed. But these disruptions around the planet might be evidence of something more than just hatred and greed. Scientists are only now learning to see an order in the midst of the chaos. Our short films explore this new order, bringing forth a planetary mind. Let's begin with a basic truth. The universe operates with a self-organizing creativity. Let me give two examples. 14 billion years ago, the universe consisted of primordial plasma made up of electrons, protons, and neutrons. They relate to each other in ways physicists have studied and quantified. And yet, here's the astonishing fact. These particles brought forth 1 trillion galaxies. Those same particles are still here. It was because they entered into deeper relationships with each other that the architectural marvels of the galaxies emerged. To take in the reality of this process, pretend for a moment that the particles can talk. Imagine approaching a proton and asking, did you have any inkling that your relationships would enable the Milky Way galaxy to come into existence? This same self-organizing creativity shows itself with the appearance of the first cells of life, which spread over the earth and still survive everywhere. 2 billion years after their appearance, some of them deepened their relationships and constructed fir trees, hummingbirds, and blue whales. Could a single cell imagine that by entering into new relationships, it was bringing forth a hummingbird? We began our exploration by asking the same question, but on a new level. Can we imagine that humans, by their interactions, are bringing forth a new mind, a noosphere? The first step is to recognize that human evolution is already being directed by our collective consciousness. For example, the chemistry of the atmosphere is being determined not by the laws of physics alone, but by humanity's economic activities. Can we take the next step and imagine that human activity might become harmonious with the life systems, and that humanity, acting as a whole, might act in ways harmonious with life? One last word. Not every cell was drawn into the creative work of life's monumental advance into multicellular animals. But the cells who were drawn in were sufficient to make it happen. The same might be true with the noosphere. Even though this is the work of humanity as a whole, the number of humans who need an explicit conceptual understanding of the noosphere might be relatively small.
If you yourself are one of them, if you have an intuition that your life's meaning involves working with the emergence of a planetary mind, join us. The Human Energy Project is a gathering place. Our mission is to disseminate the story of the noosphere so that creative personalities drawn to this work will more readily find each other